guys, welcome to another episode of Freewheeling. I'm Dr. Dave Nichol. This is the show where we answer your business, life questions, anything you got going on in veterinary medicine. We will take a crack at it if we think we've got a shot at giving you a good answer. Otherwise, we'll probably just reply and send you to somebody who can give you a good answer if we can't give you that. So the thing I wanted to talk about today, and the question today, actually was spawned from a post on Instagram and Facebook I put out this week, which was effectively a statement saying, we've got to stop letting other people live rent-free in our heads. This is something that a lot of us do, and we do very frequently, way more frequently than we should. And it causes a lot of angst and energy to be expended in directions that are not helpful for us. You know, we only have so many hours in the day. We've only got so much energy to give every day. And the problem is if we're giving a lot of that energy or using a lot of that energy up on worrying about things or situations or people, then that anxiety is not good for us long term, but it's completely slaying our productivity, our effectiveness, and our happiness. So I just posted that as a statement on Instagram. So thank you for those of you that like that. And the people, like several people have asked back, yet totally agree, but how the hell do you not let people live rent-free in your head? So I thought that'd be a good question to answer today. So the answer to the question, okay, so how do you go about not letting people live rent-free in your head? Is there's multiple ways and things you can do that can help with that. Now, first up, it depends on the situation. So some of the things that live in our heads and we allow much more airtime for our cognitive abilities and our CPU, our processing unit, it's got a certain amount of focus, a certain amount of stuff that it can do. And if we're letting serious stuff in the way of there, then obviously that kills our productivity. But some of it can be little stuff and some of it can be big, heavy stuff. Okay, so first of all, little caveat to what I'm about to say. If the things that are living in your head are so big and bad, then you probably should go get professional help. And you should definitely not feel bad about getting professional help. That does not mean you're weak. It does not mean you're crazy. It does not mean any of those things. It just means you've got some shit going on and it's totally fine to go get that stuff sorted and helped. Okay, so go see a counselor, go see a psychologist, a therapist. Find somebody who's a good fit for you and work your problems through. Just when you leave them here and in here, that things can get really out of control. Okay, so since I am not a psychologist or a counselor, I'm not going to try and pretend that I have an answer for you if you've got some big stuff going on. But what I can do is I can tell you and I can just share with you how I have, my journey of how I have found really useful tactics to just not allow the storytelling that happens in a lot of our brains and just crushes our productivity. So here's the first step. A lot of what happens is just what I said. It's storytelling. Okay, so let's imagine a situation where you have a colleague and they've said something, or a boss, and maybe you feel slighted, belittled. Your ego is bruised a bit, and you feel mad about that comment. Or maybe somebody did not treat a case the way that you had asked them to treat a case, and they took it in a different direction, and now you're mad with them. Okay, so that can turn into a problem because if you don't address it, because you're conflict averse, and which of us isn't in some way conflict averse, then you then have a damaged relationship, which becomes harder over time to fix, and you waste a lot of mental energy just wondering about why did they do that? Like, do they not respect me as a clinician? Are they, do they not think I'm good enough? Or maybe you're thinking they're a moron. Why did they take it that way? Blah blah blah. Okay, so here's the first thing. Step one is recognize your triggers. Okay, so I think for all of us, self-awareness is one of the first steps to, and one of the most important things about becoming more emotionally intelligent. So a lot of this starts with, in fact, all of this starts with a strong emotional response. Okay, we have emotions. Emotions govern a lot of our behaviors. They are really useful things in some respects and really unhelpful things in other respects. The truth is they're there, and unless we're all going to turn into Vulcans anytime soon, they're things that we just have to deal with. So they definitely have their advantages. Like, I love to feel happy. I love to experience joy. These are wonderful positive emotions. But there's negative emotions as well: anger, anxiety, frustration, resentment. They all exist for a reason as well, but we have evolved so quickly, societally, that sometimes these emotions are leading us up the wrong path. And they're leading us astray quite badly. So I think the first thing is, in order to work with our emotions, we sort of have to be aware of our emotions. So step one is learning what our triggers are, or learning what your triggers are. Okay, so if there is a particular client that says something, or a family member or a colleague, the way that they say something, the thing that they say, the way that they interact with you, and you always feel yourself, you'll feel it physically somewhere, maybe getting tight in the chest or butterflies in the tummy. In that case, just learn to recognize you're having a physiological response. That means you're having an emotional response. That means in some way, shape, or form, you're being hijacked and potentially you're losing control. So that's the first thing. Recognize the emotion. How do you do that? You practice it. It's like every skill. This is just, emotional intelligence is not like IQ. It is a skill set. Some of us were blessed with stronger skills than others. But you can completely learn this, right? So learn to become aware by practicing self-awareness. So when you're in situations like, for example, if you have a strained relationship with an in-law, well, learn what those triggers are, deconstruct those moments. And when they start to arise, then we have to be able to divert our mental energy in another direction rather than get sucked down our normal pathway. Because here's what happens next. Once we've had the emotional reaction, we then label it as something good or bad, but we place some judgment. So if, for example, somebody mentions a comment from the Daily Mail, I might get triggered by that and think that person is not of high intelligence for believing anything that's written in that rag. And so there's a label. Okay, I just labeled them as dumb, right? But that's actually probably not true. And then what happens after I label is I storytell, okay? So if that behavior happens again and again and again, I storytell and I say, that person becomes some form of moronic imbecile because they always say stuff like that. And so now my behavior starts to change based on that story, okay? Or I might start to storytell as, why do they do that? Or do they just do it to trigger me? Or are they trying to wind me up? Or do they think I'm a moron? What's going on there? So I can tell myself all manner of stories at that point that are going to pour petrol on my initial emotion. So it might be an anger to start with, but then by my storytelling and my judgment, I chuck more fuel onto that in a negative emotional sense. So now I might be feeling frustration or anxiety or perpetuating my anger. All bad. All bad. Okay, so instead, recognize you're being triggered. Okay, take a breath. Be careful not to label. So you might say, okay, they read the Daily Mail. So what? No big deal. Doesn't mean they're a bad human being. It just means they've got a different perspective on life to what I have. And so now I'm on a different path. Now I can actually try and replace the initial emotion, because what I've done is I've created a little emotional buffer zone around myself by recognizing I'm being triggered. And now I'm going to try and transplant a new emotion in on top of that. And the one I always go for is curiosity. And go, instead of going, you're wrong because, which is judgment, I can go, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious. Tell me more why you see things that way. Help me understand that perspective. So now I'm in a position where I'm asking questions and I'm learning what's going on in somebody else's brain. And now I'm in a better position to understand what's going on with it. So rather than make a judgment, get in a fight and start storytelling, and actually if I get in a fight, I'm probably going to get their emotional response. I'm going to trigger them to get in a fight back. So now they're storytelling about me. Neither of us is actually being our true self, which is why we often walk away from arguments feeling like silly or like embarrassed because we weren't the person that we know we can be. And the same is true of the other person, right? So instead of that, once we've gone down a healthier pathway by recognition, buffer zone, curiosity, transplant, and now I'm starting to understand somebody else's position, I may still not agree with it, but I'm in a much better position to have a controlled conversation about it and ask more questions about it. It's like, so really, like, where did they get that data from? Because I've read different data. You know, that sort of exchange can start to happen. And so now my storytelling is okay, well, that's just different. Okay. And but by maintaining a healthy relationship, maybe there's a chance that one of us can convince the other or move us a different direction. Or we just agree to disagree, because that's completely fine as well. We don't have to win an argument. Um, and actually, with social media and very polarized things, you probably won't win an argument, but you can lose a friendship, you can lose a relationship or lessen that. And I think that's got a bigger long term impact. So that is how that is one strategy as to how I handle not letting people live rent free in my head. Is I just simply don't let the emotion take me the direction that I naturally might want to go. Instead, I try to shepherd that emotion back with recognition and self awareness, with buffer zone, with curiosity and questions, and that allows the emotional moment to dissipate. And so I don't have to let that person fester in my head. Okay, I don't have to have that argument or that person living rent free in my space. Now, on a smaller level, if somebody in your practice or hospital decides not to follow your treatment plan, for example, then again, it's the same thing. So you just say, okay, well, they didn't do it. I wonder why they didn't do it. So you might still get mad. You might still get frustrated. Like, it's unlikely that I'm going to, in one 12-minute video, be able to unpick what naturally would happen in your brain. In the same way that I might get mad. Like, okay, sometimes people post hurtful comments back about my videos. It's like, I could get mad about that, and you know, as a somebody who generates a lot of content, sometimes that happens. So it just happens. All I've got to do is go, okay, that's someone else's opinion. Let's get curious. Why do they hold that opinion? And often things work out pretty well by doing that. But if I walked away and story told that person was a moron, then I would be angry. I could fester for a whole evening or 2 evenings or 3 evenings on that negative comment. By not doing that, I give myself the opportunity to at least understand somebody else's opinion, and that always demonstrates your ability to be a good version of yourself, a good human being. And a lot of veterinary practices would go a long way in terms of eliminating their toxic cultures if they were just able to eliminate judgment and replace it with curiosity. That one thing would save so many of you so much mental energy and mental baggage. It would really revolutionize where your practices are at. So there you go. There's a little tool, there's a little framework that you can use. The last little tip that I'll leave you with is simply this. Bad news rarely, if ever, improves with time. So if you've got something on your mind, just deal with it. Just have the conversation with the right person in as compassionate, as kind, and as curious a way as you can do. So that person doesn't follow your treatment plan. Let's go back to that. Why not go, hey, listen, I'd left the treatment plan. I see that you decided to go down a different route. I'm not quite clear as to why you did that. Can you explain to me your reasoning so that I understand where that was going or why you made those decisions, and also what plan that we have to make from now, okay? Because one thing's for sure, you can't go back and make them ungive the medication or undo the thing or unhave the conversation with the client, right? Unless you've got a time machine. So there's no point sweating on that. Okay, just let it go. Understand why the person took it that direction. They probably didn't do it just to annoy you. They probably did it with the best will in the world. Or maybe you handed off a case to somebody that was already swamped and they did the best they could with the time available. Have the conversation. But if you're judgmental in that moment and you go in all guns blazing, of course you're going to have a blow up. Of course you're then not going to have a great relationship, or you're going to have to work hard to repair that relationship. Instead, get curious. So questions. What happened is a great question. Um, could you explain to me the process that you went through to take the case in that direction? Because I had a different thing in mind, and I just would like to understand sort of the divergence point there. Would that be okay? Those are the sorts of ways that you can engage in a conversation so it doesn't have to be confrontational. Now, you do need the other person not to be confrontational back, which means they have to be adult in their communications as well. But you don't control that. The only thing you can control is you. And let me tell you, when you go in with curiosity, most people will be absolutely fine with that conversation. Okay? So that's a slightly longer debrief or answer than normal. I hope that gives you some value. I know that a lot of us, and myself included, this is easy to say to a camera. It's a lot harder to do in the real moment. So just don't beat yourself up if you're not awesome at this every time. It is absolutely certain the case that this is a skill, and like any skill, it requires time and patience and learning and focus in order to master that skill. It might take you years, but I promise you this, it's worth it, because you will not eliminate everyone living rent free in your head. Okay, there will always be that person gets under your skin, but you will eliminate the vast majority, or minimize the amount of time people get to live rent free. And that opens up so much more possibility for productive, positive work, less anxiety, more happiness in your life. So I hope that was worth your while spending 15 minutes listening to that. I hope I made the point clearly and you got some value out of that. Tell me what your strategies are, okay? I do not profess to be some sort of psychology expert. I really share what has worked for me on my journey, and I hope that it will work for you. But please share your wisdom in the comments beneath, either on the blog, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, then in the podcast's comment section. On YouTube, leave your comments there also. As always, thank you for listening. Be safe, be well, be happy. Dr. Dave out. Have yourself an awesome weekend. Take care, guys.